And now,
ladies and gentlemen,
please fasten your seatbelts.
Welcome to PreneurCast.
You know, business cards are being swapped, beers being drunk.
Can I say a nasty word? Can I say procrastination?
With Pete Williams and Dom Gosher.
how well did that go down?
Talk about that entire thing in a very another rant and soapbox episode if we want to.
Visit us online at PreneurMarketing.com.
Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of PreneurCast with me, Dom Goucher. Pete isn't with us this week in person, but he has got a great interview for us. Now, for the next few weeks, we're going to be going back to that alternate week model, and we're going to close the year out with some great interviews that Pete's done. Pete and I have got quite a lot on working towards our 2014 plans, as we've been talking about in the last few weeks. And we just want to make sure that we continue to deliver quality to you rather than just filling blank air. So, with that said, this week, Pete's talking to Matt Frazier. Now, Matt is the guy behind the site nomeatathlete.com. And this started out as an interest piece for Pete because of Pete's interest in vegan food and vegan living. And in being healthy and all that training and stuff that he does. But as you'll hear from this interview, there's a lot more to do with No Meat Athlete, and it's a fabulous business. And the story of how it started, how it got going, and how it's maintained through its contacts with its audience, its community, and just that whole story of growth is really, really interesting. And as always with these, it's applicable to anybody in any business. So, like I always say, get out your pen and notepad if you can, or just listen carefully as Pete talks to Matt Frazier.
Matt Frazier, thank you so much for your time, buddy.
Thanks a lot, Pete. I'm excited to be here.
It should be good. So the No Meat Athlete. Now, this is something that's very close to my heart, being sort of dabbling on and off with the vegan sort of lifestyle for a few years, and now sort of, really jumping into that plant-powered sort of, lifestyle tied in with obviously the whole endurance stuff, which is your background as well. So it's and there's a whole business behind this too, which is the exciting part for me to chat to you about. It's the whole, how did you grow nomeatathlete.com into the behemoth that it is?
Right.
So you're
Sure.
off the back of a nationwide book tour, which we'll definitely touch on, but I'd love to go back to the start and kind of just get your story, the whole vegan athlete or no meat athlete type of thing. I think vegan's got, some really bad connotations with it. So we'll say no meat or plant-based athlete. What's your story before we get into the whole website business side of things?
Sure. So I was a marathon runner, not vegetarian or vegan or anything like that, just running marathons, and I was trying really hard to qualify for the Boston Marathon. That was like my life goal at the time, and I had been working on it for, I think, 4 or 5. Actually, no, I'd been working on it for 6 whole years, and had finally plateaued. I had taken 90 minutes off my marathon time, and was still 10 minutes shy of running the time that I needed to get to Boston. And I was in grad school at the time, and just all of a sudden got this urge to become vegetarian, really for ethical reasons. Didn't have to do with performance. I didn't even, I thought that giving up meat meant giving up on everything else and giving up the running and, not enough calories, not enough protein. So I finally decided to just give it a try. And when I did, I was in grad school and I was kind of bored with what I was doing. So I said, I'm just going to start a blog about this topic, because it seemed to me that, an interesting blend, because exactly what I said, like that I thought this type of diet could not possibly work with training for marathons, much less anything beyond a marathon. So I thought people might be interested in this experiment, and from the very beginning, I considered that maybe it would grow into a real business, not just a blog. But when I started, I was just writing out what I was doing, writing my experiment down, and it really resonated with the crowd. And over the next 6 months, I built not a big audience, but a decent one for 6 months of writing a blog, and qualified for Boston. 6 months later, took those last 10 minutes off my time. I think a big part of it was the diet. Yep. And and from there, it just kind of took off. Like people started to want to hear more about how do you make this work than just about like what was I eating for breakfast and what was I thinking each day. Like, more than about following my training, it became about helping other people to do this, to start out with this diet or do better with it or do better with running. So it's just kind of grown from there, and I put out some training programs, and just recently, I guess about 4 years after the blog started, put out the first published book, the print book.
Very, very cool. So with the Boston Marathon, for people who don't know, it's pretty much it's the Olympics of marathon running besides the Olympics that you have to qualify for it. You can't just enter. There's cut-off times per age group. So, like, which is what was about a 3:15-ish? Was that sort of the rough time?
It was a 3:10 for me, which is like a 7-minute and 15-second mile pace.
Yeah.
Which, when I started out, my first marathon was 4:53. So, while not like an elite thing, I mean, lots of I don't want to say average runners, but people who are just above average can eventually get into Boston if they work hard enough. But starting from where I started, which was a very much below average runner, that was quite a journey for me, for sure.
It's definitely on my hit list. I haven't done a lot of marathons outside Ironman races, like, its own standalone. And mine's sort of a 3:30-ish sort of PB, personal best at the moment. So, one of those things in a couple of years' time, I think I'm going to try and have a good crack at, getting qualifying down a little bit and have a go for Boston, which is very cool. So, you mentioned you started all this when you were at grad school. Was it a business degree you were doing?
In a way, I was a finance major in undergrad, so I definitely had that interest in business. But when I went back to grad school, I was studying applied math, actually, and using math to analyze like financial markets. So I was looking at options markets and trying to model them in different ways, and it was interesting. Like, I really love the math behind finance and stock markets and things like that. I love the mathematics of uncertainty are fascinating to me, but I just didn't really see the path that I wanted to be on. Like, I didn't want to be a professor. I knew that. Had a lot of kind of problems with the Wall Street, I guess not for the U.S., the U.S. stock market. That whole mentality and culture, it just didn't really suit me well. So I knew I wanted to do something for myself. I knew I wanted to be my own boss, have my own business, and, build and grow something on my own. But I didn't really see how I was going to get there with the math degree. I mean, I thought maybe some sort of consulting firm one day, or, I was kind of just banking on some idea to hit me and didn't really know if that would happen. So as soon as the No Meat Athlete thing got big enough that it was clear that it could be a full-time business, I decided to just jump and do it.
That's fantastic. So the starting, the inclination to kind of, start the blog, had you sort of read stuff that, blogging, there is a potential business in blogging, or was it purely just, hey, people are blogging and, they go to blogger.com, I can start, this open diary and I'll just start, being public with my story and you're sort of doing it for, I guess we'll say ego things. That's probably not the perfect word, but a lot of people blog for the sake of their ego, not for their bank balance. Obviously they're two different, very varied paths you can go on. Was it more of a, hey, I just want to write and share my story kind of thing to start with completely, or was it like, hang on, there could be a business here, I'm going to test this out for a few months and see if there is an audience that I can monetize?
Yeah, it was more the second one. And I mean, there was definitely a personal thing in it for me. Like, I was excited to do something different from grad school and more exciting, and I was really into cooking at the time, so it was just fun for me to be able to start sharing that with the world and writing something that people would enjoy. But honestly, I didn't know anything about blogs before I started it, and had just happened to attend, actually 5 days or so before I started the blog, I should say, I went to a Tony Robbins seminar. Okay. I don't know if you guys know him. He's the
Tony very well. Yep.
Yeah. So went to one of those, and that's actually where I finally became convinced to try out the plant-based diet. He wasn't entirely plant-based, but on the last day of his seminar, it was about maximizing energy so that you could actually implement, all these great changes that everyone was planning to make.
Yep.
And he promoted a diet that was it was basically vegan plus fish. So I decided to go ahead and go vegetarian now because I'd had those ethical leanings anyway, and said, you know what, I'm just going to try it. But also in that seminar, he gave out this free DVD, and it was an interview between him and Jeff Walker, who I'd imagine you've heard of in the internet marketing world.
Absolutely.
And I'm not into that whole internet marketing crowd that much. Those guys. I mean, there's some good stuff to learn from them, but I just watched the DVD from that, and in one of the things Jeff said was if you want to start a business, the first thing he would do, he said, is just go start a blog. Go to WordPress.com, get a free blog that takes 5 minutes to set up, has .wordpress.com in the URL. Just get started that way and see if people are attracted to what you're doing. So that's, the first step. It seemed like an easy step. I'd put off starting a business for so long and procrastinated and had all these fear things. But when I heard that all I had to do was set up this thing that would take 5 minutes and start writing, I thought, I can do that. There's no risk in that for me. And I didn't know where it would lead, but I thought it cost nothing to do, so I figured I may as well try it.
That's very cool, because it was actually at Tony's event in Sydney about 10 years ago that sort of started me when I went vegan for the first time. So it was actually the same fourth day of the UPW event after walking on fire. A couple of days earlier that I sort of went, okay, I'm going to try this vegan thing because of that day at the seminar, and I did it very unhealthy. This is the interesting thing, if we kind of talk about the health side of stuff, which I'm sure you know much more about than I do, but people when they think of vegan, they think, oh yeah, they're ridiculously healthy, they eat plants, but you can be a very unhealthy vegan, and that was me. You know, I was eating a lot of fried chips and hot food and that kind of stuff. It was very unhealthy vegan. It just didn't stick for me. And then obviously over the last 18 months or so, I've been sort of learning about food and learning about all that nutrients and all that sort of stuff, and been doing it a much more fulfilling and sustainable way, which has been great. But yeah, it was a Tony event that actually started me off.
That's funny. It's the same story.
Cool. Yeah. So, and obviously I know Jeff relatively well. From my sort of exposure to the internet marketing world and that community as well, with a few friends and things. So what took that blog to sort of become the nomeatathlete.com that it is today, which is huge? Because obviously there was no doubt a trajectory somewhere where you sort of started blogging. Did you start investigating SEO and actually really trying to learn the game of online marketing, or did it sort of just literally just grow organically because you were putting out really good content that you were clearly passionate about, that you were doing regularly? What was sort of the actual path there?
SEO actually was something from the beginning that I focused on, but that was just kind of one example or one symptom, I think, of the mindset that I had. And it's always shocking to me when someone starts a blog and says, "Oh, well, it didn't really work, it didn't go anywhere," but they didn't bother to learn everything they possibly could about it. So within a week of doing that, I started looking up. I remember the day I Googled, how do you get more people to read your blog or something like that? and I found the advice that you need to have 5 articles that are legitimate, cornerstone articles, which now that I look back at it, it's that's kind of ridiculous that 5 articles is all you need. But I thought, okay, I need to write 5 really good, strong articles. And that was just the first of, hundreds of Google searches about how do you do this. And one thing led to another, and I found the copy blogger people, and then I found the pro blogger, and I got into their premium thing, and I was just soaking in everything I possibly could. And I did buy an SEO book, an ebook about SEO, the first ebook I ever bought. Yep. I think it was about maybe 2 months after I had started, and really got some good results right away without doing any of the black hat. I mean, just very basic stuff like editing title tags in the post, normal stuff. But back then, I think that stuff worked even better than it does now, of course. And so SEO was a part of it, but it was just one thing. I think the thing that really did make the huge difference for me was when I got the idea, understood and accepted that you have to package the content well. Content by itself is great and will carry you so far, but packaging it with a really, really strong headline, one that is engineered to be something that people share on social media, perhaps even without reading the post, that they'll say, okay, 10 ways to do this cool thing that I am interested in doing. I'll share that. And that made such a difference when I started implementing it.
That's very cool. So it was more about sort of, okay, what's the context around the content that was a big shift for you?
Yeah, and then how do you promote it? What do you do? Yes, you can spend an hour writing a post, but then what do you do with the next 5 hours? Do you do nothing and just refresh your stats the entire time, or are you going and emailing people and asking them, would you link to this, or maybe this would be a good fit for your audience, or doing all the social media stuff? And I mean, it was a mix of all that stuff. I tried to never be too pushy or too upfront about asking people to share or link to stuff, but in a subtle way, that was a huge part of it. Working to actually get people to your content once you've written it. Yeah,
and I think that's a big step that people miss. But also, I think a lot of that is whether it was really consciously thought of or not, but you are in a niche of very, very passionate people. And yes, because I think it clearly shows in your writing that you are passionate about this topic, that it makes it easy for you to reach out, and it makes it easy for people to accept that reach out and actually bond and support you. Because I think a lot of people, what they do is when they go into a particular niche, they go into the niche based on the numbers in terms of, I've done some keyword research. This, scuba diving niche looks really profitable. I can get some traffic there, but I've never even been in the water. I can't even swim. And it's okay, so you clearly know that that's never going to work out long term for somebody because they're not passionate about it. They're not willing to sort of reach out and connect with people. And Whereas if you are going to a niche that you're passionate about, that is, really, really defined, which is, no meat, vegan, plant-based endurance athletics it looks like a really small niche, but it's got a huge community globally. And obviously you're definitely at the pointy end of that stick now, which is fantastic because of that passion and the connections you'll be able to make because of that.
Yeah, and I would say two things about that. I mean, that's absolutely the correct observation. I think that, like, with the niche stuff, like with the sites where you look at the numbers and then go set up an affiliate site or whatever that you don't care about, it seems like that does work. I mean, that, like, people are successful that way. Mm-hmm. But in general, they need to have dozens of these things and put in all that work to get tons of these things up and running, and each of them makes whatever, a few $100 a month or something, and then when you combine them all, you start to get a decent income. And it's just like that's an entirely different game from the one of passionately going after something that you really do care about and facing the criticism. Like if you started a scuba diving blog and then people start leaving negative comments about how bad your scuba diving advice is, like that's not going to really hurt if you don't care about that at all.
Yeah.
But going into something that you actually do care about, you have to put much more of yourself into it, and there are probably much more emotional ups and downs, and so it's just kind of a different game. And I think it depends what type of person you are. Like, what are you in this for? Are you in it for something that you want to build a life around, or just kind of a way to make some income? Because that's that would be a different answer. The other thing would be that one of the things I've kind of realized is that if you start out with a really, really tight, narrow niche, like when I started mine, I thought this might be too small to work. And I didn't know anything about internet marketing, but I just thought, vegetarian, vegan, and endurance athlete, that's a pretty small slice of the population. But what I realized was that over time, once you kind of get traction with that small audience, then I've been able to expand and write about broader topics, like even sort of personal development type things, and get broader. But starting out really narrow helps. So the advice I'd give there is try to pick something like a domain name or a site title, or your niche itself, something where you can resonate with a very small, passionate group of people at first, but that gives you some leeway to expand later on.
I couldn't agree more. So, something you touched on there, which I want to delve into because it's interesting, is that the emotional side of blogging. Because I think running a business, no matter what it is, whether it's a telco here in Australia, whether it's a blog on vegan or something in between, that and particularly I think in your space too, there's some very passionate people who are sort of this plant-based, vegan, vegetarian type lifestyle mixed with a lot of, I guess, misinformation and misinterpretation of information. So is it fair to say, now I've read a lot of your blog, but I haven't actually read a lot of the comments. Are there a lot of people who come on and actually disagree with that, hang on, no, this isn't a good source of protein, or that, what about, the hemone, I think that's pronounced that right, hemone proteins versus this? And is there a lot of that heavy discussion that kind of is mudslinging to a certain extent that you have to deal with?
Yeah, there is that. And the example, not so much with protein, but every single time I ever mentioned an oil on my blog, like coconut oil, olive oil, whichever one it was that I happened to put in a recipe, somebody would come on and say, that particular oil is the worst one you could possibly eat. Why don't you use this other one instead? So people are really passionate around that, and some of them with good reason to be, some of them not. And some are passionately against using oil at all. But that's just one example. I mean, there's the paleo side of it, the people who are very much anti-vegan, some of them.
The CrossFit movement.
Yep, exactly. And there's the super, super raw vegan that, they think that if you cook your food, you are destroying it. And how could you possibly post a recipe that involves cooked food that is poisoning people with this cooked food? So, there's a ton of that. And I've learned to just kind of filter out. And also over time, as the blog has grown, those people do come in from time to time. But I think they tend to the audience sort of self-selects as one that is interested in my stuff. So it's not like there's this growing faction of raw foodists that are ruining the blog. They just stop reading it if it's not for them.
Move on to something else.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, very cool. So the next part of obviously the journey is obviously you started blogging and you started building up this community, and SEO kind of did its thing, and you were reaching out and people were sharing your message, which is such a great message. And I encourage people to head over to nomeatathlete.com and check some of the stuff out. And there's on the right hand side there are some of those cornerstone articles you mentioned before that are worth checking out, even if you're not vegan or want to go vegan. Just some interesting stuff to start you thinking of. But at what point did you start monetizing the blog, and what was that? Did you start doing affiliate offers to begin with? Because obviously now you've got ebooks and your own print book, which I'm definitely want to get into in a moment. But what was the actual phase you went through to sort of start monetizing the audience that you began to grow?
I think I did some ads, like some sort of ad network I signed up for that paid $2 per 1,000 page views, and did that for a little while, but pretty quickly realized that wasn't the way to make this into a full-time thing, or really something that I wanted to be doing. Like I didn't, like no joke, the ad would sometimes show a picture of a piece of steak, like from some grocery store chain in the U.S., and it would just look ridiculous that here was this blog and the ads on it I had no control over, and they were things that I didn't believe in or eat. So I got rid of that and actually started selling the T-shirts. That was when I decided to start the blog, that was the only monetization strategy I had in my mind. Like I said, I didn't know anything about blogging or internet marketing. So the idea of writing an ebook was kind of foreign to me. I hadn't even considered that you could do that. So I just imagined T-shirts. Yep. So that was the first thing that I did. And then the first summer that the blog was around, I did start getting some T-shirts printed up. I got a small order of like 30 or 70 from the screen printer and sold them basically at cost, thinking that maybe I could get the idea to catch on. And, in some way that kind of worked. Like that's been a huge thing about the site is the shirts. People see them at races, find out about the blog from them, or they wear theirs to a race, someone else wears theirs to a race, and then they connect over that, and they end up coming back and posting the pictures on Facebook and telling me about it. And while not a huge moneymaker, the T-shirts have been such a key part of it and such a big part of the brand.
It's almost that growth hacking, which is obviously the buzzword at the moment. You almost sort of growth hacked some of the marketing of your audience there as you gave T-shirts away at cost, essentially. And that sort of spread the word, because obviously people are going to races trying to be athletes on this no-meat diet, and they're proud of that, and they want to sort of, brand that and say, hey, this is me, I'm passionate about this, and they're helping deliver your message to a much broader community, which is fantastic.
Yeah, and I even wondered, like I started to learn more about SEO, as I mentioned before, and I heard that if you get people to actually go type your site's name into Google rather than just directly typing the URL in, that it would have a kind of positive reinforcing effect, saying this is a legitimate brand, saying that to Google, that this is a legitimate thing, people are searching for it, and then going to that particular site that they searched for. And once the shirts started really, really clicking, and like we got a few thousand out there, and then 10,000 and 20,000, I think that is a significant amount. People who see the name and then remember it later but don't remember the URL or anything, even though it's the same URL, but just they end up Googling No Meat Athlete. And I think that may have some sort of impact on Google. I don't know. But so they've been great.
I think it's possible, absolutely. Two questions around this. One, there's almost like a little, I guess, logo or character that kind of, represents No Meat Athlete, the little carrot, the running carrot. Did you design that?
My sister did.
Awesome.
She's a much better artist than I am, and that was from the very beginning kind of captured what I thought was the mindset of the site, which was one that was not the preachy, angry, militant vegan thing, but more like, hey, this is a fun, healthy thing to do, and like it doesn't have to be about preaching. It can just be it doesn't have to be about ethics. It can be entirely about health or whatever your reasons may be. And so that's worked well. And I've kind of realized that carrot is a little bit feminine in the audience that it attracts. So I've made a new like more masculine looking, tougher looking stamp logo type thing. So now are those two, but everyone remembers the carrot, of course.
Now the other question around the carrot is, what was it like the very first time you saw someone with that carrot tattooed on themselves? That would have had to have freaked you out.
Yeah, it was hard to believe. I didn't believe that it was real. It seemed like I thought, why would anyone possibly get that put on their body? Like, I would never get that on my body. I'll tell you that much. But I've met like 6 or 7 people now. I'm 2 on the book tour, and I got pictures with them who came and showed me their tattoos, and like it's like a big 4 or 5 inch carrot on their calf, which is like, I don't know. It's weird. It's a strange thing for sure to see people that passionate about it. It's cool. I'm honored that
you
they
know
would do
you've got a really great audience, and you're putting out great content which really resonates with people when they're going off and getting your brand stamped
Yes.
on their body like the Nike tick.
Right.
I think there's like the Nike tick, there's the no meat athlete, and that's about it.
Iron Man.
An Ironman. I've got an Ironman tat. I had to when
Yep.
I used to race the shorter distance Ironmans. I was like, okay, I got to do an Ironman before I'm 30, which I did, and I was going to get a tattoo. And even though now I think it's kind of a bit, I guess, lame to get that tattoo, I kept the promise to myself when I was 20. I'm like, I'm going to do an Ironman, I'm going to get a tat. So I've got one between my shoulder blades and my back. And they're about the only 3 brands you see people actually stamping on their body.
And Harley Davidson, the motorcycle company, apparently they do it too.
So you're in good company with those 4 big brands.
Yeah, that's true.
So you started monetizing with the T-shirts and stuff like that, and they're available on the site, which is very, very cool. And so hopefully some new cycling jerseys coming back out again shortly, because I definitely want one of those. And then you sort of went to the ebooks. Was that sort of the next step for the monetization?
Yeah, it was. And I actually wrote first an ebook that wasn't that close to the brand. I had written you probably have read the book Born to Run, I'd imagine, as most people interested in ultra running have. I read that, and just as an experiment, came home and started cooking the pinole that they were saying was this great food that the Tarahumara ate during their runs. And that blog post got really popular. It was getting I think it was 200 or 300 visits from Google per day, which was 10 times more than any other post on my site was getting. Mm-hmm. So as I was trying to grow this business, I was thinking, hey, if all these people are coming for that, maybe what I should do is monetize that particular post, and just because I know I could make more pinole recipes and make them a lot tastier than this one that is basically just kind of ground up toasted corn, which doesn't taste too terribly good. So I just put together a little ebook with my sister, again, who was a vegan baker and a very good one. So we just put that together and split the money from it. And that really helped the site get going. It was the first actual income where it was a decent amount of money, not by any means a full-time job.
What's that? And profitable, unlike the T-shirts.
Yeah, right, exactly. It was 100% of it was profit now with an ebook, which is great. So after that, and after I saw that, then I was like, I need to put together the flagship product for the brand. And it took me a while to get over the fear of going out and saying here's my guide to running your first marathon on a plant-based diet. Because when I started this whole thing, like I said, I was so new to it. I didn't know anything more than anyone else did about being a vegetarian runner. I was a runner, and I was an okay one, but I didn't know how to fuel it or what to do. So I grew a lot in the year and a half or 2 years from that time when I started to when I put out this ebook. But the big leap was in my, having the confidence to take on that teacher role and say, I'm telling you how to do something, rather than just saying here's what I did and it worked for me. So getting over that really was the difference between it being a full-time business and not being that. So it was a mental shift, and it really, once I decided I was going to do it and was willing to do it, then it was just sort of a matter of mechanics of putting the books together, and the marathon roadmap and the half marathon roadmap, which include training plans and diet stuff and recipes. Very obvious products to make for a site like mine, but for those first 2 years, it was just hard for me to feel okay about doing that.
Yeah, and you were still working elsewhere before those ebooks came out? The ebook sort of was when it kind of became, okay, this can be a full-time thing?
Yeah, I was in grad school, and the grad school stipend that I was getting was enough to live on, but not really any more than that. It was just barely enough, and my wife was working full-time, and I was getting this. So I'm kind of fortunate that I didn't have to leave a $60,000 a year job and have to make that decision of quitting that to go full-time. Yeah. It was quit this meager grad school stipend and yes, give up on the dependability perhaps of the grad school degree. Yeah. But as far as giving up the money, it was very easy. And once those ebooks were out, I could clearly see that they were making as much or more than the grad school thing was making. So it wasn't a hard decision financially to quit. Perfect.
So you mentioned there about the decision and the friction point and the hurdle you had to overcome to make that shift to feel confident in publishing those ebooks. And obviously you've gone on, as you mentioned before, to write on some broader topics about, positive thinking and personal development. So what's your take? What was it that actually helped you get through that shift to go, okay, do you know what, this audience is here, they believe in me, I do know my stuff and I can push this out there and get people to not only pay for it but not refund it and pass it on and share it, which is obviously what's happened. What was it that actually got you through that shift?
It was a few things. One was that just a friend of mine who was interested in business and doesn't run his own business but kind of has an interest in it. He and I were talking and he just said, like, this is the most obvious product to make. Like, you are, like, if you're not going to make that, then whatever are you doing with this business, and whatever will you make if you can't make the obvious product, like how to run a marathon on a plant-based diet, which is exactly what all your stuff is about. So, hearing that was sort of a wake-up call, and I was like, wow, what am I going to do if I'm not willing to do that? So partly it was just that pressure and kind of forcing myself to do it. The other thing was that I took a sort of a small step in doing that by making it a guide to your first marathon. I just put that in the title. I think a plant-based guide to conquering your first 26.2, and that's miles, of course.
Yep.
And having the word first in there, I felt like kind of made it like a half step. Like it was kind of still taking the role of being the teacher and saying I know what to do, but it was also something where it was like, it's not saying here's how to make it to the Olympics, something that I'm an hour away from doing, something I'm not even close to doing. It was something, here's something I've done, and I had done it now at that point 7 or 8 times. So to make that little half step was kind of easier. And I think it also although maybe limiting the audience of that product, probably made it more specific and more interesting to those who were in those exact shoes of being ready to run their first marathon. When they see that, then they can understand that it is going to be at their level and not something that's like crazy technical training advice or anything like that.
That's awesome. I think it's important to sort of, I think a lot of people when they talk about, or help people, or they're trying to teach people to sort of create products online and things like that, it's always about, okay, what does your audience need and write to them and stuff like that. But sometimes you need to create your first product that's right for you. Yeah. I think that's what you've done too. You molded it a little bit that was right for you. And I think that made obviously a huge difference to you and the business, which is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And it has. And those 2 ebooks really, like as soon as they were both out, was when my wife and I had made the decision to do full time. So it was kind of interesting in hindsight to look back and say, like, here was this business that had this potential of being a full-time thing, but it wasn't until I just took the steps of putting those things out. And it's not like the audience grew anything, or it's not like it got any crazy links from any huge authoritative sites. In that meantime, it was just a matter of putting forth the effort and being willing to have a product out there that made it be a full-time thing.
It's very cool. Now, the launch of that, obviously you mentioned at the start that obviously, I guess the entry drug to all this was Jeff Walker and Tony Robbins. Now, did you actually go and do a Jeff Walker style product launch to release the first ebook and product on the side and to an email list that you built up at that stage? Or was it simply like, hey guys, here it is, here's a sales letter? Or how did you actually go about releasing it? Is there a bit of a story around that at all?
Yeah, that one was sort of a combination of those things. I was still pretty new at even having an email list. Like, I don't know when I started collecting emails, but it probably wasn't until a year or so into it. So I didn't really, hadn't bought the Jeff Walker product launch formula or anything like that yet, and just did what I knew how to do, what seemed easy and like super authentic and right for my audience and for me. And that was, I published, I think, 3 excerpts of the book as blog posts during the last 2 weeks before it was ready to come out. And I had read enough online from the free products I'd bought, the free stuff that was online, not products I'd bought yet, that I knew that you were supposed to have a little window where it was a really great deal, just to kind of motivate people to make a decision one way or the other during that time, and then have the bonuses go away or the price go up after that period. And it worked really well, and it felt really good. It was every time was like I publish an excerpt, and there'd be a link at the bottom that said, if you like this excerpt, you can get more when the book comes out. Sign up here to be notified when it does. Awesome. So there's a big difference here. It wasn't what is taught in those product launch programs,
heavy pitch,
which
heavy
is
sell.
What's that?
Heavy pitch, heavy sell was very subtle.
Yeah, right. And but it's also with the pre-launch content in those programs, they are saying basically opt in here to get my bribe, to get my pre-launch content, because I just put together a special report or a 40-minute video for you about this. Opt in here to get it. This wasn't opt in to get the pre-launch content. This was just opt in if you want to hear more when the book comes out. So that felt entirely different. And I launched the second one, the half marathon roadmap, with the actual product launch formula. I bought that program and tried it out, and did what they said, like, opt in here to get the pre-launch content, to get my 10 keys to doing whatever. But I just felt so much better, I realized, about the first way, the way where you just kind of like put out excerpts and freebies and like basically make your pre-launch content totally public, and then have links there that say, if you like this, you can find out more about the real product here. Rather than kind of tricking people and saying, get this free content, opt in, and then presenting them later with an offer that they didn't really sign up to get. I just felt so much better doing it the first way than with that. So I've since kind of gone back to what I originally did. But not that I don't think there's good stuff in Jeff Walker's program. I think there's a lot of really valuable insights there that you can do in an authentic and ethical way. It just wasn't quite right for my relationship with my audience.
I think that's a different thing, as you said, it was your audience too. I think one of the biggest wins that people get out of doing the traditional product launch, where it's gated in that people have to put their email address in to get the content, is for the affiliate side of the game, where you are getting a lot of other people to promote this particular product launch, and they're driving their audience to you. You want to capture their email address so you can market to them throughout the rest of the sequence, so you can have that that larger database, so then you can obviously track who that referrer was for the sale. So a lot of that is driven by that affiliate side of the marketing game, whereas because you were selling, as you said, to your own audience, they were already there. They're already coming around. They're going to be sticking with you on some level anyway. So you didn't need to sort of have that gatekeeper mentality in that regard. If you went to the affiliate market, you probably would have to do that just to satisfy the affiliate requirements more than anything else.
You're absolutely
right about, because obviously you've got a lot of connections in this space now, and it's growing ever more every day. Have you thought about doing some sort of traditional product launch with affiliates for a product in the future, or is that not where you want to go with this particular business?
I've thought about it, and I did try it with the second launch that I said, the half marathon roadmap. I did do with the Jeff Walker thing, and I tried to get affiliates on board and tell them to link to each of the pre-launch contents, and that there would always be the opt-in, and their stuff would be tracked. I did all that, and it was okay. It had some decent results, but nothing that was even close to what my own audience was buying. Yep. So since then, I've kind of just realized, I don't know, I think a lot of times we learn things from the internet marketing gurus, and what they're saying applies so much more to the internet marketing niche than other niches.
Absolutely.
So that's what I found to be true. It's just that for my audience, it worked better kind of just to speak to them.
Yeah, I think that you're absolutely right. There's that whole message to market match. It's such an important thing that people overlook, and we talk about this on our podcast so often. Is it's just just because this sales letter worked to sell you doesn't mean it's in this particular space, doesn't mean it's going to work to sell your audience in a completely different space. You've got to make sure there is a message to market match. And in this food nutrition space, the internet marketing kind of indoctrination hasn't happened. So the people you get in to be affiliate partners don't really understand the models. They're harder to work with. They don't really get it. There's just a whole bunch of other things you need to consider. That doesn't mean it won't work, and can work exceptionally well if you do it right. But it's a hard game to play sometimes.
Sure, and that's what I found. There weren't that many people who knew about affiliate stuff or wanted to be involved with making money with their blogs, in my niche, and that's totally fine and cool, and it just made me realize that it wasn't quite right.
Yeah. Is that the same sort of mentality why you haven't gone down the path on your own right to sort of be doing a lot of affiliate offers? Because you could obviously be doing a lot of affiliate offers to ClickBank ebooks, to product reviews, because I know there's some huge blogs out there in the endurance space where their whole business model is, we write really detailed product reviews that we get for free from these suppliers. We get paid to do it, and it works really, really well for them. Is there any reason you haven't gone down that path with this particular audience, talking about athletic supplements or products and review them at the same time? Is that sort of past your desk or been offered those sort of opportunities?
I've always done the Amazon program, which I know is tiny thing compared to earning 50% on an ebook or more. Is earning the 7 or 8% that Amazon will pay you on a physical thing. But that has actually, as I've done it over time, and the links accumulate, and the old posts pick up search traffic, and now I have an actual gear page on my site that is mostly Amazon products, and it's just the stuff that I actually really do use. I don't know, that whole affiliate game, it just has always seemed to me like just a little bit too much kind of double dealing going on. Like it's, you start using a product just so that you can be an affiliate for it, and now you can say you use it. But like you only started because you wanted to sell it. Like, I don't know. It just never quite felt right. And I didn't know if my audience understood when I said I'm an affiliate for this offer or for this product, or do they not even know what affiliates are because they're not maybe the internet marketing audience that other blogs write it to.
Yep.
So like, do I need to interrupt the post more than that and say, okay, I actually make a certain commission on it? Do I need to write that every time? Do I need to I don't know. It just got easier for me to be more genuine and kind of feel, and like only a link to the stuff I really do like, and be very casual about it. I don't know. It just has felt better. But the Amazon thing is not a small amount nowadays. Like now that the audience is there, and the posts get a lot of traffic, that still is a nice chunk of change at the end of the month.
Do you mind sharing like roughly how big your audience is? Don't have to go into too much detail, but is there some rough numbers you can share?
Yeah, I think there are like, I have a newsletter and a blog opt-in. They're both email run by AWeber. I think the blog feed subscribers is like 14,000 or something, and the newsletters is like 26,000 or something. Yep. So the newsletters, people who I have permission to actually send them emails. So I think that's a lot more valuable than the blog feed people. Although through AWeber, you can technically email the blog feed subscribers, but I don't think I've ever done that other than just the automated blog feed.
Yep.
And I don't remember the exact traffic. I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 750,000 page views per month before I went on the book tour, and I don't remember if that was, I don't know, 500,000 visits per month and then 250,000 uniques or something in that range. I don't remember exactly what it was.
Big either way.
Yeah, I mean, compared to where it started, for sure, and small compared to some other ones. There are some other monsters out there that kind of dwarf mine.
Yeah, well, I think I heard recently, I was reading somewhere that Mind Body Green just hit the top 50 sites in the US based on mobile traffic or something ridiculous like that.
Wow, that is crazy. Because I only heard of them last year for the first time.
Yep.
Yeah, they've grown really fast.
I think I stumbled across them because of Rich Roll. That's how I kind of first.
That's right. Me too.
And then I'm sure I saw a tweet from the CEO that maybe Rich actually retweeted something about they last month they were in the top. I'm going to say 20, but I think that number's too low. So I'm just going to make up 40 or 50 most traffic sites in the US based on mobile traffic. I'm just like, that's insane. They have done a hugely good job to sort of build that audience up there, and they're monetizing that now with courses and stuff that Rich has done and things like that, which is very exciting. But one thing you just mentioned, the book tour. We've got to touch on this. So a few months ago, you released No Meat Athlete, a physical book by yourself, and you had a co-author on this as well. Is that right, Matthew?
Yes, I did. A guy named Matt Frazier, a nutritionist or registered dietitian who is also vegan and also an endurance athlete. He's done several iron distance and ridden his bike across the country. Did some 500-mile bike race in 3 days. So crazy stuff.
Okay, cool. So obviously this is no doubt a natural extension of where you wanted to take the brand No Meat Athlete. What's the story behind the book?
It was something that the publisher. The publisher came to me about it. I got introduced by a mutual friend, basically, or mutual, I guess, colleague, to a publisher. And I'd had some offers from agents before to put together a proposal and then shop that around to publishers. And I guess out of laziness, I just didn't do it. Like, it just seemed like, wow, I need to put together this big proposal, and then we don't even know if that's going to be a book, and then I got to wait and play the whole shopping it around game and being told no and all that stuff. So for whatever reason, I just didn't do it. Finally got introduced to someone, directly to a publisher, and just talked to them for a few minutes and kind of really trusted them because of the way I was introduced to them. And we just decided to do it. And certainly probably a smaller publisher than would have been able to get had I done the shopping around thing. But I was pretty happy with the way it worked out. And their vision for the book was the same as mine, and that was to make something that was maybe slightly more approachable than my blog content, not just like a marathon guide, but something that would be more interesting to people who are just kind of very casual athletes, maybe a 5K runner or not even that yet, and are interested in becoming vegetarian or vegan, and just kind of made it a guidebook to this lifestyle. A lot of focus on starting out, how do you transition to this diet, and how do you get yourself to start running like 30 minutes without stopping. So a lot of beginner content, but then also some more advanced stuff, and plenty of recipes and training plans, and kind of what you'd expect in, I guess, an ambitious guidebook to this lifestyle.
Well, I actually have to say it was one of the better books I've read. Over the last while, Thrive by Brendan. Obviously, I love Rich's book, of course, who's been on the show before. Scott Jurich's book. Obviously all of Brendan's Thrive series. Some of the Forks Over Knives books. I actually found your book one of the more enjoyable to read, absolutely, and one of the more educational in that it spoke in language that I actually understand. And this came from someone who grew up in a household where it was a piece of steak, potatoes, broccoli, pumpkin, carrot on the plate every night for 18 years. Like, we were not a big food family. So to me, nutrition was like, I remember saying up until probably 6 months ago, if I could get all my nutrients out of a pill, I would. Like, I just didn't enjoy food, didn't care about food, didn't even understand food. Like, literally 12 months ago, someone said, explain, protein and amino acids. I couldn't explain what they were and break it down, and I still probably can't articulate it perfectly. But even I'd been reading, Thrive and all that sort of stuff, I still found that your book pulled it all together in a much more understandable way for me, which is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that, and that's really something that I have heard a lot on the book tour. Like, that's what people said all the time, was that what they liked about my approach in my book was just that I'm relatable because I'm not a professional athlete, and I'm not in any way taking away from what those guys have done. Like, I don't pretend that the food in my book is as healthy or is the fuel for athletes that the food in Thrive is. Like, that's a different level of nutrition, and one that I'm not trying to get to, because I'm writing to people who have families and, like me, have a 3-year-old who will not eat raw tacos if you serve that with a collard leaf as the taco shell. So, like, it's a different group that I'm trying to hit, and what those guys did, all 3 of those books you mentioned, Brendan's stuff, Rich Roll's, and Scott Jurich's, those are some of my very favorite books. I've read each of them a few times, and it's great. So it was very good to find a little bit of a different niche, something that was more lifestyle oriented, and like, how do you make this work with your life, and answer all the questions that I had when I came to it, which is a different place than coming to it from being a pro athlete and saying, here's what I'm going to do to improve my performance, versus like just a regular guy who was into running but for ethical reasons wanted to go vegetarian, and then had to answer all these questions about how can I make it work.
So I think for a lot of people, hopefully, just in the same way Jeff Walker was that sort of gateway drug for you into that sort of the online community and online marketing world, I think you can be a gateway drug for a lot of people into this healthy lifestyle. And even if you don't want to, get off the couch and run a marathon, or maybe just want to go and run 5K, the first half of the book, like, to be honest, I didn't read the last third of the book, which is all about the marathon plan, because to me, like, I've got my coach, his bitch, he has what to do on a daily basis. I'm not going to move away from that. So I didn't read the last part of the book where you talk about the marathon plan. You've basically taken the ebook, the marathon, or the half marathon. Which part is in the book?
Goes up to the half marathon in the.
So you've taken the half marathon ebook or some of that and put it into the book here. So I skipped that part of the book. I read the first bit, which is all about just the actual plant-based nutrition guide, for want of a better term, and the understanding that, how to make that transition, and the recipes, and definitely, post-it noted and highlighted a whole bunch for us to cook at home. But the last bit I completely stayed away from because it just wasn't a fit for me. And I think for a lot of people, you can still do that. You can still get a lot out of the book in the first 2/3 of it. So jump over to nomeatathlete.com and click through Brendan's link to Amazon, or just go straight to Amazon and grab a copy of the No Meat Athlete, because it's a great book. But I want to talk about the book tour, because this is the interesting thing, is that, I'm guessing here from the outside, being a published author myself, that you would have made a lot more money off the ebooks you've sold than you would off, obviously, a book through a traditional publisher. So there was obviously grander plans. Obviously there's some great positioning, great ego of being, let's be honest about it, being a published author. There's definitely a huge thing about that through a third, rather than being a self-published author. It's a huge kudos and positioning, which is important. And obviously it's a great way to get, yourself on TV. There's more chance of getting some general publicity around a traditional book than a self-published ebook. So that helps get your message out further. So it's almost like the next step in the T-shirts, really, I would think. Is that a fair a fair assumption?
That's exactly what it is. And also, besides that, though, like, besides the self-serving stuff, and I'm not denying that like all the stuff you said is a big part of it, but just wanting to reach more people with this message. and for the ethical side, which is a motivating thing for me, I just thought that and I think accurately that a published print book that someone can go into the bookstore and find it just has more legitimacy, and I think will make people take the message more seriously than they will an ebook, because there's so many websites that are selling ebooks about whatever their crazy niche idea is, and people, I think, a lot of times just sort of write those off. So I just wanted it to reach more people and be taken more seriously for the sake of the message. But everything else you said, exactly right, that the financial benefit was next to none, as it is for most first-time authors. Book tour was definitely a loss. Like, I mean, I could sell books and actually be a bookseller, like buy the books at wholesale and then resell them at a retail price. So I could make some money to cover my costs, but it wasn't enough to cover food, hotel, and gas, because I drove around the country for this entire thing and paid for it. So it was an investment for sure, and it was a great opportunity. I don't think most first-time authors could justify doing that, but because I had the blog audience there this is something I wanted to do for a long time anyway. I thought how cool it would be to drive around the country and meet athlete readers all over the country, which you can do with a blog, which is amazing to have that audience and the ability to reach them and say, hey, I'm in this city on this day. So it just kind of something I felt like I had to do. Like, why not? What a great opportunity to have the book out to finally do this thing.
I was actually going to preempt that, what you were saying there with the question of, like, knowing how good this lifestyle is of being an online, publisher, and there's no doubt, I'm guessing you've come home from runs, sitting at your computer, dripping in sweat and smelly running gear, typing out some of these blog posts. Like, I'm sitting here right now smelling of chlorine from my pool session this morning, and it's a great thing about this business. You can do that. So the motivation to sort of go completely old school, get in a car and drive across the country doing, book tours is, it's the polar opposite, which I love about you, in that you are clearly doing this because you love the audience and love the community, and that resonates obviously in the traffic you're getting and the comments you get and the community you've built, and obviously the subsequent revenue that comes from that. But to go old school and spend, how long were we away for? 2 months?
A month and a half.
Away from your young family. It's a big investment into the community you've built. Yeah,
absolutely. And I actually was inspired to do it. I was on a run, 3 months ago now, maybe or so, maybe a little more than that, 4 months ago, and listening to an interview with Chris Guillebeau from I forget the name of his site. Oh, Art of Nonconformity.
Yep. And
he's written The $100 Startup, a couple good books. But he said he did the same thing. He did this self-supported book tour, pretty similar in scale to mine. I think he hit all 50 states, was part of his thing, because he's like a travel hacker. But he said in this interview that it was the best career decision he's ever made, was to go on this book tour. And he said not in the short term financially. He said it was probably break even. But since then, it's just been the best. So I just kind of trusted him and figured, even if that was wrong, even if there is no financial benefit down the road, just what a cool experience to drive around and see every city in the country that I've kind of ever wanted to see, and meet people, and go get drinks and go get dinner, and go get coffee, go for runs, all that stuff. It was a really fun month and a half that came at a cost of missing family for sure, although they did fly out and see me for a little bit of it out on the West Coast. So we made it work, and it was a lot of fun. It was such a good experience.
Awesome. Besides seeing people with the No Meat Athlete tattoo, what were some of the other crazy? There had to be some crazy stories that you experienced in terms of people telling you how their life has changed, or some of the runs you've done, or any sort of crazy things that came across the country?
I mean, it was funny how the frequency of the stories, and not necessarily like because of what I have done, but just because of coming to this lifestyle, and my site played a part in that at some point. But it was just kind of like so many stories about people who were able to lose 50 or 70 pounds, and like by the end, it was like I'd almost was not impressed anymore when I heard someone say that they'd lost 50 pounds, because I'd heard it so much. And like that's such a huge transformation, and people would just go from couch potato to running marathons or Ironmans or ultra marathons, and I don't know. I just realized what tremendous power there is in maybe this diet in particular, or maybe just any kind of whole foods diet. I don't really know, but so many people reported physical things like their back pain went away, or their headaches, or their asthma, or their skin condition. All that stuff just cleared up when they started eating plant-based and or whole foods. So it was just really neat to hear that so often, because I'd heard that plenty of times on the internet, but I always figured it was the, kind kind of a bias there. Like, yes, of course, this person's going to go to the internet with their story and write it everywhere because they're so happy, but they might be 1 in 1,000 who has that happen. But this book tour made me realize that it's a lot bigger percentage of that, people who do turn their lives around when they make a big change to their diet, and of course also start physical fitness. So that was just really cool. It was great to see that thing happen. It just made me feel really good about the whole thing, doing this, like choosing this path as my career and all that. It was just a very great thing in that way.
Awesome, man. That's such a great experience. It's something you'll never forget, absolutely. I reckon that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So 2 final questions for you. One of them is not going to be where do you get your protein, so don't stress out about
Okay.
that. I know you get that so often. But for people who want to take this first step and actually, possibly try out this plant-based diet, we should probably at least touch on some of this in our conversation as well. What would some early suggestions or starting points be for people?
Well, there's this website called nomeatathlete.com that you can go to.
Love it.
And it's great but what I tell everyone is that when I first decided to give this a try, I went all in all at once and said, okay, not eating any more meat starting tomorrow. And within a week, I had failed at that because I hadn't learned how to eat, how do you shop, how do you plan a meal, how do you order at a bar. So it was actually at a bar a week after I had started that I realized there was nothing vegetarian on the menu and just said, okay, well, I guess I have to get whatever it was, fish tacos or something. I mean, I don't know what it was. But what I found is that it sticks so much more often if you do take it gradually. Like first get rid of what I did was first get rid of the 4-legged animals and do that for a while. Then stop eating the 2-legged animals and then stop eating fish, which is a 0-legged animal, and just kind of go gradually. The other big thing is I think it's great to give yourself a little challenge that has a set endpoint. Like the Tony Robbins thing we mentioned, that was a 10-day challenge when he said to do that. So the great thing about a 10-day challenge, or maybe later a 30-day challenge if you like it, is that you don't have these thoughts of like, oh my gosh, I can never again eat a hamburger or buffalo chicken wings. Like, what am I doing? You don't have all those questions in your head. It's just kind of like, this is a fun thing to try for 7 days. And when you get to the end of that 7 days, you can reevaluate and you can decide if you don't want to do this or not, or if you do. But like, it's not like you failed because you made it 7 days and then decided to go back. It's like, I think having a defined end is really, really helpful. And after 7 days, make it a 30-day challenge. And then what I did was after 30 days, didn't even think about the end of that 30 days because I was so into it and so happy with the changes and the energy that I felt. So those would be my 2 tips. I mean, you've got to plan meals, you've got to cook. That's a huge part of it that a lot of people just kind of forget about. It's very hard to do this diet without cooking, but of course the fortunate thing is that cooking is one of maybe the healthiest thing you can do for your diet is just start cooking your own food. So be prepared for that.
I remember you saying recently on a mutual friend of ours, Osher Gunsberg's podcast, you're saying that like you just even cooking yourself will change your diet significantly because you don't reach for the high fructose corn syrup when you actually are cooking.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is for people who want to know what I like. I'm kind of somewhere half between. My wife calls me a closet vegan in that I'm a vegan at home, but not out socializing. So my rule is that I will eat a plant-based diet for breakfast 100% of the time, for lunch and for dinner when I am in control of my diet, which is like, if I'm at the office, if I'm at home and things like that. But if I'm out socializing at a business meal and someone wants to go to a steak restaurant, I'll go to a steak restaurant and have a steak. But that might be mean meat twice a month. And I'm happy with that I'm doing this not necessarily like what your initial motivation was the ethical reasons, and the more I read about it, the more I'm shocked and I'm glad that I'm now doing this for those reasons. For the sustainability reasons as well helps, but I still personally do believe that this is my own philosophy that we were the whole paleo argument that back in the day, hunter-gatherer kind of things. I believe in that, but I think when we're able to hunt and get meat once every sort of 3 or 4 weeks because of
sure,
that's the nature of life, and I still want to have that meat because I'd love my steak, but it is more that delicacy now for me, and I'm finding it fantastic. I'm recovering better between workouts. I'm not getting that 3 p.m. kind of slug that I used to have, and I'm feeling fantastic, and it's been working really, really well for me. But I did do a no meat November where I basically went, okay, no meat at all for the entire month, just to sort of kickstart this upper gear, and that's great. And then the other night went down to my mum's house in Ocean Grove down the beach, and she cooked a beautiful roast, and it was fantastic. But I haven't had meat again since, and I won't probably again till Christmas Day. And I'm happy with that, and it works really, really well. So, start with those little goals. Don't think that you're never going to eat meat again. Just start off being a closet vegan and go from there.
Yeah, I think that kind of stuff is a great way to do it. I mean, like it's an enormous difference ethically for sure. Like an ethical person who has the big ethical motivations will say no, I just couldn't feel right about that. But that's a personal thing for the most part. And I think like even there's a guy named Dr. Joel Furman who I really love his stuff, and he has arrived at the conclusion that a plant-based diet is the healthiest one, just from all his medical research and everything. But he says that he doesn't know if there's a difference between eating 5% of your calories from animal products and eating 0% of your calories from animal products. He is not sure from the amount of research he's done. So that kind of goes with what you're saying. Like, that's perhaps how it was back in the paleo days, more than what the modern paleo, the marketing paleo has become, which is like, meat, bacon, cheese, all the time, just meat, no cheese. Obviously, they're against dairy, I guess. Yeah. But I think the gatherer hunter rather than hunter gatherer is a more accurate way of looking at it, and I think that's, as far as health goes, that's a very healthy way to do it for sure.
And I completely agree with that, because I just finished off the plant-based nutrition course through Cornell, which I found fantastic. Right. First time I've actually done some study for quite a number of years with tests and exams, and I love that. And I think there's obviously huge arguments from Colin Campbell and all those guys about the the effect on protein when it comes to chronic disease and stuff. And that was the real thing that shook me up as well, is that mixed with the endurance benefits and the recovery benefits. Those two things is what sold me on this sort of diet. But I still do believe that there is that room for a little bit of meat-based products to fit in that sort of 2 to 3% of your calories a month or whatever it might be from meat still, or protein. Still works and fits those guidelines. And hey, it's an ever-going process for me, and I think it will be for everybody. But my final question for you, Matt Frazier of nomeatathlete.com. This is a question that I ask everyone on the show. What's the one question that I haven't asked you that I probably should have?
You know what? I was thinking about this in the shower today. Not what your question would be, but I was thinking that a good question to ask authors, first-time authors or recent authors, would be, what would you go back and change about the book if you could change it? And I thought that'd be kind of a nasty question to ask authors, because you're asking them to say something bad about their book. Yep. But so I would say that's the question that maybe you should have asked. So
no doubt while you were in the shower this morning thinking about that question, you would have obviously thought about how you would answer that too.
Right, of course.
So what is it?
I would have said a few things. I would have said what you kind of said earlier, was that one of my big reasons with this book, or one of the big aims, was to make it the gateway into this lifestyle. So while I haven't gotten a lot of pushback from the paleo, or the raw food crowd or the oil-free crowd, because my food is not raw by and large, and I include oil in my recipes. But as you know from the Cornell and that whole school of thought, most of those people are very much of the mindset that oil is not a health food and should not be included in a diet.
It's not in its whole form. It's not what you should be doing. Yep.
Yeah, because it's just not a whole food. I mean, it's extracted from plants in some way or another. So I wish I would have made that a little bit more clear from the beginning, that I think those diets are fantastic. Like oil-free, if you can make it work with your lifestyle, I think that's probably healthier than a diet that includes the amount of oil that I did in mine when I wrote this book. But so I wish I would have said this is a gateway, and if you decide that your personal path is to go raw or go oil-free, that is fantastic. But so, and the other thing I wish I would have said is really actually stressing that, because I've learned a lot more, especially as I've read more Dr. Furman stuff. I've kind of come to the conclusion that oil is not a health food, and I wish I would have just given more options for not including it, because nowadays I don't eat nearly as much as I did even when I wrote that book just a year ago. So while I still think it's great in there, I think it makes it more approachable for everybody. I just wish I had given people a slightly better idea of how I eat now, but that would have been impossible because I didn't eat this way then.
Yeah. Well, that's the blog post for you, because obviously, no doubt, once people do go into their local Barnes & Noble or pick it up on Amazon.com or, on all the different places around the world, which, our listeners are going to do right now, no doubt, but also everybody else, they're going to come to nomeatathlete.com anyway, so that could be a blog post.
Yeah, there you go. I hadn't thought of that, but you're right.
Absolutely. Well, Matt Frazier, thank you so much for your time, buddy. It's so good to connect verbally on this call, and I think a lot of people learned, hopefully, a lot on this in terms of everything from just how to grow an audience and grow a business online that you're passionate about, but also hopefully this conversation for a few people has been a bit of a gateway for them to try the plant-based, and even if it's just doing a green smoothie every morning. I remember hearing a conversation. I don't know where the quote came from. I think it was from Body by Jake founder, and the question that was posed to him is, what's the one thing people can do out of everything they do to make their life more healthy and more vigorous? What is the one tip you would give anybody? Do a certain exercise a week, do a certain thing, and his thing was start the day with a perfect breakfast. Forget about lunch, forget about dinner, forget about even exercising. Just start the day with a perfect breakfast, because what you'll do is you'll get to 9 o'clock and you'll be like, I had a good breakfast. I'm going to try and keep this going. And you might last till 10:30 before you have a chocolate bar. Then the next day you have a perfect breakfast, and you might last till lunchtime before you sort of have a hamburger, whatever it might be from where you're starting. And I think that's probably the best advice for just everything. Like, it's a productivity tip that I use. Start your day right, because you'll try and keep that momentum going. And there'll be days you'll break, and there'll be days you won't be consistent. But if you start right, you'll end right. And I think for a lot of people, start with a green smoothie. That was kind of my gateway back into this lifestyle after I read Rich's book a couple of years ago. I was like, okay, I'll go back into this smoothie thing. That's what I started doing again, and that started feeling good. I'm like, okay, well, let's sort of try and incorporate a healthier breakfast, and and then obviously now that closet vegan kind of 98% plant-based whole food diet, which has been superb for me. But it was that starting off slow and building that momentum up, which is what it takes to blogging too. Like, you post quite regularly now, except for the period when you're on the road. But you can't start a blog and start posting every single day. No one has that discipline or that skill or that audience. You want to start building up slowly. So I think that's my tip anyway.
Good. I totally agree with you on that. Like that, that whatever that tiny change is, and maybe for some people it's not a smoothie. Like, if you can more easily force yourself to eat a salad at lunch, a huge salad at lunchtime, like whatever the one change is, like, do it and do the one thing, and that can very often be the wedge that changes so much about, like, a year from now you could be entirely different with the way you eat because that one change started it off. So I totally agree.
Awesome, Matt. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks a lot. This has been fun, Pete.
Well, as promised, that was a fantastic interview with Pete and Matt Frazier there. Lots and lots of tips on lots and lots of different areas for lots and lots of different people who are just interested in being in business, publishing, carrying on a blog, just so many different things. That interview was a bit longer than usual, so I'll cut it short at the end here and just say thanks for listening. Drop us a line over at PreneurMarketing.com with your comments, or on iTunes, and we'll see you soon.
You've been enjoying another fine episode of PreneurCast with Pete Williams and Dom Gocher. Make sure to hang out with the boys online at www.PreneurMarketing.com or drop them a line via PreneurCast@PreneurGroup.com.